Hi, equestrians. Welcome to the Connecting Horses to Yoga podcast brought to you by Callebaut Yoga. I'm Makayla, the owner and founder of Callebaut Yoga, and today I want to discuss with you how yoga can be part of the process for equestrians. Now, let's break down what I mean by part of the process for equestrians. I think in the equestrian industry, there tends to be methods and procedures that equestrians take throughout their time within the industry. For example, preparing for show season by reviewing what they did last year, setting new goals, and then creating a plan to get them to the new goals. Another example would be weekly plannings of when you ride, when your horse has days off, what you're doing within each ride. I know I have trained at multiple barns. One of them, we did a flat work lesson, and then we did a half flat work, half jumping lesson. And so these jumps tended to be a little bit more technical, or we would do grids or in and out, something to kind of hone in the technical side of jumping. And then our final lesson of the week would be a horse show prep day, in which we would go through 3 different courses to basically practice as if we were at a horse show with a low round and a couple over fences rounds. So that was a procedure and part of the process for me as an equestrian as a competitive hunter-jumper rider. So then we're taking yoga and considering it as part of the process for equestrians. And yoga takes on many different forms. If you're new to Callebaut Yoga, let me kind of explain a little bit more about what yoga is. So yoga by definition means the union between body and mind. Yoga does not mean asana or the physical practice. Asana means seat or posture, depending upon how you translate it. So yoga being not only the asana physical practice, but also a philosophical way of being, allows yoga to be integrated into the equestrian process. I do believe that yoga, both in the physical practice as well as the philosophical practice, should be integrated, but I find that it is almost easier for equestrians to consider adding the philosophical approaches of yoga because of the time commitment that can come with a physical practice. So first we're going to talk about using parts of yoga philosophy as an equestrian. A big one that I will always talk about is ahimsa, meaning non-harming. So integrating ahimsa into the process of an equestrian means that you're considering what is beneficial for you and your horse and what may be detrimental or is not the right thing for the day. So ahimsa gives you the ability to say no to things that you would otherwise say yes to. Maybe you come out to the barn, your brain's a little fuzzy, you're just having a weird mental health day, and you're recognizing that the day may not be the best for a lesson. And instead you go to your trainer and say, hey, this is what's going on, I would rather do X, Y, and Z. Maybe that choice is to just spend a really long time grooming your horse. Maybe you know some body work and you choose to do some body work with your horse that day. Or maybe you know some ground work and instead of getting on, you decide to practice ground work and work with your horse in a different way that still uses both his body and yours. So that's just one way to practice ahimsa. Another way to practice ahimsa that's a little bit more integrated to your horse is recognizing their needs and maybe again pulling out of a lesson or changing plans for the day. And I recognize that not everyone can just not ride in a lesson. Sometimes trainers only have specific lessons or lesson times, but I think it is something to consider that there should be able to be an open discussion with your trainer of, hey, this is as much as my horse and I can show up today. This is where we're at. Can we modify the lesson plan to fit our needs for the day? So a really good example from my personal life is my horse Bo, who's actually behind me finishing his breakfast, is very weather affected. And I talked about this in the last podcast episode, but when we get a cold spell or the weather changes, usually it's when it gets colder, not so much when it gets hotter, but when it gets drastically colder and it hasn't been cold for a while, he gets extra frisky, he gets extra anxious. If the wind is really bad and it hasn't been windy recently, that affects him. and he just becomes a quote-unquote spookier version of himself. I do not consider him to be spooky because he's not a bolter. He just kind of jumps and then that's the end of the spook. But I do recognize that those days are not always the best days for me to get on. Instead, I would choose to maybe just take him for a hand walk or do groundwork with him, maybe even do body work to help relieve some of that new tension in his body from the weather change. And that's just one way that I practice ahimsa with him, is I am trying to practice non-harming both for his body and mind as well as my own. And being able to make that choice is really validating as an owner. And I think practicing ahimsa can be super beneficial in taking yoga philosophy to be a part of the equestrian process. Is you're giving a word, a ideology to an action that you're trying to take. And I can even recall a few times as a competitive rider when I didn't practice ahimsa, and I remember getting off and just crying and being like, I can't do this. Something's wrong. This doesn't feel right. And it was a day that I really probably shouldn't have been riding, both for my own personal reasons as well as how Bo was behaving that day. We both weren't in the mindset to safely ride in a lesson. And then there's other times that I remember showing up. It wasn't with Bo, it was with a different horse. And it was winter. I was in school at the time. I was senior in high school with this horse. And I went to my trainer and I was like, hey, I don't know what's up, but I'm not feeling 100% mentally. I was like, today might be rough. And I remember she looked at me and she said, do what you can. Thank you for letting me know. And, ironically, that was one of those days that the horse I was on really stepped up and took care of me. And he was more focused than he normally would be because I wasn't in the headspace to be focused. So again, I went and I said something because I was like, I think I can try to work through this and really focus on grounding myself into the ride, into the horse, and taking myself out of whatever anxiety that I was having that day. But again, I was practicing ahimsa by telling my trainer what was going on to keep both myself safe as well as my horse, so that she knew that there were other factors beyond what she could just see with my physical body as I was riding. So ahimsa is a huge part, an integral part of bringing yoga into the equestrian process in a day-to-day sort of way. Now, taking into the physical asana practice of yoga, I have found that yoga has helped me the most in my physical body, even though I have done, going to the gym, I've done at-home workouts, I was active throughout high school, I was dancer when I was younger. I have not seen the most improvements in my body from a muscular sense as well as a flexibility sense besides when I started doing yoga. And I wish I had known the effects that yoga had on my body earlier than I did. So I didn't really get into yoga. I played around with it on and off throughout high school while I was riding, but I didn't get into yoga until after Bo was retired. And so now, noticing the way yoga makes my body feel, I can assume that I would be a more well-rounded, connected rider because I'm able to drop into myself rather quickly, and I am the strongest and most flexible I've ever been. So there's something about balancing as a rider the need to be strong and the need to be soft enough to move with your horse. Well, yoga teaches very similar things in terms of what parts of your body are you activating and what parts of your body are you releasing in every posture you do. Obviously, there are some postures such as a warrior two where you're activating almost the entirety of your body. And then there's poses like Shavasana or Child's Pose where you can make them active poses if you like. Well, they tend to be poses that you rest into and try to release specific muscles, your entire body, your mind, whatever it may be that day. So talking about yoga as a physical practice that equestrians can integrate into their process of their equestrian lifestyle, I think a lot about strength training and cross training. So with our horses, we think a lot about cross-training them in terms of doing dressage-based groundwork while we're also doing hunter-jumper equitation style jumping to get both sides of the coin. Maybe you're at a barn and you're privileged enough to have trail systems nearby, and so you pick days, or maybe it's over the summer months, where you trail ride more to help your horse and you relax outside of the ring. This is all methods of cross-training, and it has huge benefits to you and your horse. I right now, with Bo being retired, move between groundwork, between riding. I currently ride him bareback. I take him for walks. I do body work, and I'm essentially cross-training by all these different things, even though we're not doing it at a high level. I set up ground poles, then I'll set up obstacle courses, and we'll do pole bending sort of things. So I do a lot with him, and it's to keep him staying interested because we can't do high-level stuff that he loved doing. But it's also because I'm trying to work different parts of his body or release different parts of his body. So for equestrians and their physicality, the yoga provides a way to cross-train that isn't just putting muscle on, it's also helping with flexibility. And this idea that you have to be flexible to do yoga is entirely false. You do not have to be flexible to do yoga. You will see an increase in your flexibility as you do yoga. So looking at how equestrians can use yoga in the asana practice is something of your own choice. So there are tons of YouTube channels. I have a YouTube channel that you can have free access to, but you can decide what you want to do and when. I think there is a huge reason to have what is called yin yoga as a part of your practice to help you decompress, to help you open up throughout your entire body. And I think these types of classes, so yin yoga classes, would be really helpful after rides or after a hard week of riding, whereas taking vinyasa or hatha yoga classes, which are considered like power yoga, or vinyasa is considered a power yoga, helps to build strength while at the same time opening up to the different parts of your body. So these might be used at the beginning of the week or on your horse's off day to prepare your body to have the strength to ride the next day. The other thing I like about having a yoga practice is it's not a set time frame. So if you're going to a yoga studio, they tend to be hour-long classes. But if you're looking online, whether on my channel or someone else's, there are multiple different class styles, class lengths. I know I have classes on my channel that range from 20 minutes to an hour. And each class is different. You're going to do different things. Some are a slower pace, some are quicker. But the idea here is that you can use yoga to be what you need as an equestrian. So if you're looking for more strength and you're feeling a little weak in your body, you might choose a vinyasa yoga. But if you're looking to relax and calm yourself down, you might look for a yin yoga, or you might look for something in between. So that's how you can integrate yoga as part of the process as an equestrian. This is not the complete conversation. This is just a very basic foundational idea of how to use yoga as part of the equestrian process. And if you're looking for more ways to bring yoga into the barn aisle, you can visit CallebautYoga.com. It's linked in the description down below. And I have a free course called Clarity for Equestrians that shows you how to use yoga as an equestrian to gain clarity over the equestrian you want to be. And there also are little videos and modules explaining different ways to bring yoga into the barn aisle, such as using intentions, using breath work, and it even includes a rider warm-up. It's all standing, it's about 3 minutes long, and you can do it safely with your horse in the cross ties before you get on. So if this course sounds interesting to you at all, it is completely free. Go on to CallebautYoga.com and you will get a pop-up there, or you can go to the programs page and it is there as well. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast episode. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. and I will get back to you. If you would like to connect with me more, you can check out my Instagram page, Callebaut_yoga, or visit my website where there are links to get in contact with me by email. Have a great day, and I will see you soon.